hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And it is Judd's Hockey Show. Judd and AJ on a Friday. We are recording this. Some interesting nuggets, I guess, league-wide, including some wild stuff from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. And also, if I'm not mistaken, he does a lot of work for TSN in Canada as well. Very plugged-in guy. And with the 2 days between games in Florida, it looks like some reporters actually didn't go to the beach. They actually spent time on their cell phone mining for potential gold. So we're going to get to something that LeBrun reported that I think is a very interesting thing if you're Bill Guerin, and I don't think it's a good thing. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Parlor. I've been talking to you about the Parlor burger now for a long time. The chicken sandwich, absolutely delicious. I've been talking to you about, of course, during the Wild season, the location on West 7th Street, right down from the X. Also one in the North Loop. But how about this? Out west now, Excelsior. There is a Parlor there as well. So if you are going out for a day on the lake and thinking about some place to get a great bite to eat, perhaps some very good craft cocktails, make your stop. The Parlor Bar in Excelsior. It's a supper club and a regular Parlor bar as well. Parlor, absolutely delicious, and now in Excelsior. Okay, so Pierre LeBrun had a bunch of things, as I said, but I think the most intriguing one, just from the Wild perspective, actually is this. He is reporting from what he is ascertaining from his sources that there are no real sellers, that there's no, and he even names like the Sharks and Blackhawks as teams that think they can, and perhaps they're right, I don't know, take a step. So they don't want to dump. He said only the Penguins possibly, but that's guys like Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell, because they're not going to trade their heritage guys. So the Penguins might subtract, but it would be very strategic, and it would not be the names that we have talked about. So here's where I put this together as a very interesting thing and want your reaction to it. The Wild doesn't have an option of not being good next season. Like, they can't be like, well, no one would trade with us. We signed a guy, but that's going to be it. The Wild has to be good. We know that they're actively looking to trade Marco Rossi, who, while he was a fourth-line center in the playoffs, was a top six guy throughout the course of the regular season. So where do you think this leaves them as far as let's just start with the free agent market and the fact that, as we talked about, with Brock Nelson now going back to the Avalanche, which is fine, the market is really at center. It's really thin. And Sam Bennett's either going to Florida or he's going to get paid way too much probably somewhere else. So what is your feeling about what the Wild's approach needs to be, given the fact that I think it's fair to say they need to win? So, like, it's not an option to say, well, we tried, sorry, we missed.
Yeah, this is, I'm not going to say like nightmare worst case scenario for the Wild, but this is not ideal by any means for, like, it seems 2 years in the making. It was like, okay, we're going to have this money. We're going to be able to go out and do this thing. And now, hey, we're nearing that obstacle. And now we know we want to trade Marco Rossi. We're going to get an upgrade. Well, hold on, pump the brakes. Not so fast. This, to me, I think makes the path for the Wild this offseason after the Stanley Cup final wraps up very clear, Judd. If you're going to spend in free agency, it's going to be on a talented winger. That's where you're going to throw a chunk of cash at. The other money that is remaining off of that should, in my opinion now, the fact that there's not a team that's willing to part ways with a bona fide number one center is either A, you might have to just re-sign Marco Rossi, and that's going to be a conversation that we can get into, or if you still want to try to trade him, which whatever you get back now is very interesting because there's not a lot of sellers, which honestly, does that drive up his price then? If for a team that knows they want to be, that's a conversation, but is to go after one of these veteran, seasoned, older centers that you could potentially sign to a 2 or 3 year deal. Maybe the term is okay. Maybe it's a slight overpayment, but it's something where after 2 or 3 years, it's back off the books and then you reassess. Okay, let's take stock of where we're at. Either A, there might be a much better free agent center class in 2 or 3 years. There might be a better situation for a team willing to parts, maybe similar to what they feel the Wild are in right now, where they have somebody young that they can't maybe extend at a certain term, but what do they want to do? It feels like a Tavares. It feels like a Johnny Toews. It feels like a Claude Giroux. These older guys that you can get to for a 2 or 3 year deal seem like a higher probability of a signing for the Wild this offseason now.
And I think that in our notes back and forth about the show, you probably hit it on the head. So I think Giroux goes back until we see something about him having some type of contract stalemate with the Senators. I think he goes back there. But as you said, Tavares now, LeBrun essentially said that if you think that Tavares is going to go back to the Leafs for a quote unquote bargain like $5 million AAV, it's not happening. So that leaves the door open to me for, okay, there's a potential here. He wants to go back to Toronto, but he wants a contract that's fair. We know for a fact that I think Toronto is going to pursue without any question Marchand. I think that Toronto is going to, they're going to get some room off the books because I'm almost positive Marner's going to leave. But the point is, John Tavares last season, he's going to be 35 on September 20th. He's played 16 seasons. But 75 games, 38 goals, 74 points. The goal total was his most since back in 2014-15. I think you might be right. And I will say this on your point about the contract. I'm more worried about term than the actual pay, if that makes sense.
No, I understand that for sure.
Like if you're going to go 6 years, okay, 5 years, okay, I'm probably not comfortable with that. But if you're going to overpay slightly on a 3-year contract, and that's always been in various sports my stance. I'd rather overpay for what I'm going to get right now than string it out and be stuck, because you got to figure if the Wild signs a guy, and this is all reckless speculation, but if the Wild were to sign a guy like Tavares, you got to figure he's going to get some, if not complete, unfortunately, no trade protection. So it's got to be short, but I think that you might be right here, because if you look at the circumstances, and LeBrun didn't mention, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't recall him in his notes mentioning Buffalo. So like we've talked about Tage Thompson, which would be a major trade, but I mean, it's Tage Thompson. He didn't mention them, and I don't know where, I mean, that team is so weird. I have no idea where they're at. But Buffalo was the one I come back to. If there would be a big trade to be made for a guy like Tage Thompson, that would be potentially great. But it is a conundrum. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. But I think you actually found some more on Instagram about this, and LeBrun does mention Jonathan Toews, who, by the way, I'm not putting all of my stock into. So, I mean, Toews is not my splash. Hey, here's a guy that last played in 2022-23. I'm going to pay him, and he solves the problems. Right. But he is 37, played 15 seasons. As I just said, hasn't played since he played for the Blackhawks in 2022-23. I did find it interesting that LeBrun reported Pat Brazone, who's the agent for Toews, has gotten, supposedly, and I'm sure this is from Pat, a lot of calls, but they're keeping the list to 3 to 4 max. Toews is from Winnipeg. The Jets are one of the 3 or 4, and they might be the landing spot. But didn't you find out that Toews is perhaps in our midst, or has been?
Yeah, allegedly, the good people over at Elite Prospects, which is a website that I spend far too much time on, Judd. They do fantastic prospect breakdowns. They have a great draft guide that they put out every year that has so much information and great player profiles. But it was on their TikTok page, actually, that whoever is the talking head personality guy who does those videos had pretty clear, concrete evidence that Jonathan Toews is skating in Minnesota supposedly sometime this week. I don't know if that is like a come one, come all, take a look at the guy, or if you're just hosting him, or if that's Bill Guerin and him getting lunch all together. I think we know fairly certainly that Bill Guerin has expressed a high level of interest in at least exploring Jonathan Toews, seeing what he's got. It's exploring his interest in joining the Minnesota Wild. Before maybe any Jonathan Toews fans out there that want him on the Wild, pump the brakes, just because the video does end with him saying, the elite prospects personality saying that they assume he's going to sign with Winnipeg. I don't see that personally. I don't think that's as strong of a case as, maybe some other teams. I think the Wild could probably say, hey, we're going to give you, I think the Wild could guarantee 2 years to a term, whereas some other teams might want to go just one for a test ride. So,
yeah.
But he is skating here in Minnesota this week. I don't know in necessarily what capacity, how vigorous it is, but it is interesting. And back to the John Tavares thing too. I agree with you completely on the money wise. We know what the Wild have. And if LeBrun is reporting that, don't expect them to go south of 5 million. That leaves, I think, the door open pretty heavily for the Wild, who have, they could probably do a 3-year, and granted, I understand it's John Tavares who's 37, but a 3-year for a guy that is very consistent on the ice. I think he missed 7 games last year. Over the last 3 years, I think he's missed a total of less than 20 games.
Yeah.
His production is, over that time, fairly consistent. Like, he's not just a guy you're slotting in bottom 6. He is a top 6 center, I believe. Still, I think you could probably do 3 years and you could do at least 6.5, if not, I think 7 mil, and see if that moves the needle for John Tavares and his crew. Because if he comes here, he's a guy that I think leadership wise, from his time out in New York, dealing with the media, I think, in Toronto, being a hometown guy, I understand the affection there, but relinquishing the captaincy, I think, probably took a little weight, allowed him to play more freely, feel a little bit less responsibility. Now you come to, compared to Toronto, a smaller hockey market where I think the media aren't necessarily opposed from this show, jumping down the throats of players time and time again. So
right.
I don't think it's like John Tavares would just cast away the thought of playing for the Minnesota Wild. I think if there's a legit offer, he's at least considering it.
On Tavares, I'd like to go 2 years. I would very much consider 3. On Toews, I'm going 1 year and that's it. I don't think I can go 2, because you just don't know. Like, are you getting what? First of all, the question is, what player are you going to get at this point?
Yeah.
He's not a kid. As I said, he's 37.
Yes.
So that's a concern. The other thing too is, like, he did deal with a lot of health things. That basically forced him out of the game. So I'd go 1 year there, but if he wants to be in a market where he is, with a competitive team, it's a great place to play. There is very little pressure here. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, it's not like you're going to a big market. And about your Winnipeg point, I think it's important to say this on Toews. He's from there. And I know that sounds ideal, and I know it's again a very small market, but he's from there. Everyone will want tickets. Everyone, at least if you're here, they can drive and see you, but you're not at home. Like, I don't know playing at home is always an advantage, because there's just, and Toews seems to me, first of all, I'm sure he's a big time professional. He can tune out the distractions, but why invite them? Like, this does seem, if he was willing to sign a 1-year contract, and again, just to be very clear, this is not your answer, okay? But he's won a ton. He was, he knows how to win. He was captain of those teams. Captain Serious. Like, there's a lot of things I think that he would bring culture-wise that would be great. But he would have to basically prove that he can still play. And he would need to do it. Like, I'm not going to sign him and say, okay, Johnny Toews, first line. Tavares is a conversation. He's coming off a year, as I said before, he scored 38 goals. He scored 74 points. And you're right, he doesn't miss a ton of time. So those two for different reasons are intriguing. I want to also get to the latest Marco Rossi update. I feel like we have one of these all the time, and LeBrun actually did some reporting on that. But before we do that, I want to talk about our friends at Neos Elite Performance. Who are they? They're the people that are going to get you back on the court, on the golf course, whatever sport that you might have enjoyed at one time. if you've got aches and pains now, back pains, knee pains, things that don't allow you to get on get on the course, they're cutting edge regenerative medicine and cellular IV therapies designed to get you going again without invasive procedures. They're going to come to you as well. So you don't need to go to the doctors. This doesn't need to be complicated from your perspective, but Neos is going to get you back to doing what you love. Also, if you reference our flagship show, Purple Daily, you're going to get $500 off a cellular IV therapy treatment. That's right, $500 off. No surgery, no downtime, just results, cutting edge technology that's going to get you feeling great again. Check them out at neoselite.com, Neos elite.com. All right, Marco Rossi update. So, according to LeBrun, the Flames, Canucks, and Canadians are looking for a number 2 center. So are the Wild, by the way. But Marco Rossi fills that bill. It sounds like the Flames' interest would be lukewarm. It sounds like Montreal's would be very close to 0. But the Canucks are an option. So they have actually sniffed around and have interest in Marco. So let's tie the pieces together, though, Age. Elias Pettersson, their center, who's coming off a terrible year, but he's a very good player, who just signed a long-term contract. It sounds like he is going to stay put. It sounds like the Canucks had a very weird year. There was the whole thing between Pettersson and Miller before Miller got traded. It was a very fractured room. I don't know exactly what transpired. Rick Tocchet then bolted for because his contract ran out to be coach of the Flyers. But it sounds like they're going to keep him. So I believe it was the Hockey Wilderness. Is that the correct site? I believe, because they do a bunch of wild stuff. They threw out some potential trade scenarios between the Wild and the Canucks for Marco Rossi. And let me tell you right now, I've never been so unexcited in my entire life. But they threw out names like Niels Höglander, Teddy Bluger, the Canucks' first-round pick, and I think at the end of the day, they came up with Rossi to the Canucks for the 15th pick in the draft. I think it was Bluger and like another draft pick. That's not even going to come close. Like at that point in time, I think you've got to go back to Marco and try to work something out. So, like if that's what the market potentially bears, and who knows, like it could be, there could be a major trade made. We don't know, but but if there's teams that are like, well, we like him, but here's what you're going to get. And he did seem like an ideal guy to try to trade from my perspective to a team that might be in a little bit of a rebuild, because he's a young player and he could actually play top 6 and play a ton for that team. But if that doesn't exist because teams have no interest in dumping their good players, oh boy, if you come back to me and say the prize of the trade with the Vancouver Canucks is a first-round pick that's the 15th pick, I'm going to be as underwhelmed as you can possibly be.
You can't do that.
No,
you just simply cannot do that. I understand that, and I want to state on the record here, I'm still very okay with the Wild extending Marco Rossi. I understand he turned down the 5x5. I do think the 8x8 that is floated out there or leaked or maybe just made up, I think that is an overpayment. But if you get him at $7 million a year, I was going to say 7 times 7. If he gets the Boldy contract, but things have changed since then, including the cap going up. If he gets the Boldy contract tomorrow, it's a lesser contract.
It's what?
I'm fine with that, because now with the cap inflation, it's not, you're not saying it is the Boldy contract in the sense of it's the same figures,
but it's changed in terms completely.
But the value of it has actually lessened over time. I would be fine with that. I would actually be genuinely fine with that. And I understand, he's 5'9". I don't care. He was your third best point scorer last season.
I mean, I wish I was we all wish he was taller.
I wish I was taller. It's but guess what? He doesn't play like he's that small, Judd.
Right.
Like, and this is the thing. Like, it's a guy that he if other teams want him, why don't you? And I understand maybe he doesn't fit your play style.
Well,
I
you
think
were
you just
offended
gotta
he didn't
work
want your
around it.
like this. This to me really comes down to
that's what
the
it is.
contract, and I would love to know what turning down the 5 times 5. I would love to know if that impacted their decisions going forward. Like, it still makes no sense to me that dude was on the fourth line in the playoffs.
No, I just wish they were honest about that too. They're going to stand by their, it just, that's just what worked and it helped generate some offense for that fourth line. It's ridiculous that he wasn't at least on the third line. Ryan Hartman
play though. Like, that's the thing about it. The ice time speaks volumes. It's not, if he had played a ton, if they have decided, you know what, these two big lugs and Marco are our second line. Now, first of all, I would have said you're crazy, but then his ice time, the ice time said everything. But I'm with you. Like, I am not trading him for the sake of trading him. And right now, unless they have something, and they might, okay? But right now, if it is as grim on the inside as it looks on the outside, I'm telling those people, all of them, get in a room and work something out. I'm with you totally. I mean, you cannot, this needs to be, if Marco Rossi is traded, it needs to be a splash trade.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you deserve the King's ransom. Like, it is Marco Rossi at the end of the day.
But it's splash trade, but you got to get something really good back.
Yes, because the trades that you, and don't get me wrong, I'm still very high on Nils Höglander. I thought he was a guy that the Wild should have traded up to grab early second round in his draft class. He didn't, or they didn't, and I think he's still a good player, but is he a guy that I would trade Marco Rossi for? No, absolutely not. I would rather have Marco Rossi every day of the week. It doesn't make sense when you're talking about some of these trade proposals and like, yeah, the Canucks make sense. It makes sense for them. They're going to say yes. Why would the Wild say yes to that? It's so boring and vanilla and bland. And I know I saw somebody report that the Wild would be open to trading him for a pick and then trying to use that pick to then like acquire somebody else. Yeah, I mean, I guess that works in theory, but also in theory, you make the trade, you no longer have this player that you know what he is and who he is. And then a team goes, okay, we know you don't actually want to use this pick. We know you don't actually want to draft with this pick.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay us more now to get rid of this pick to get a player that we know, because it's the whole, what a person is versus the hypothetical.
But are you going to, but what makes no sense is, are you going to trade a Rossi, get the 15th pick, and then you're going to spend the 15th pick. I mean, it's the 15th pick. It's not a top 5 pick. It's not even a top 10 pick. And then you're going to spend pick 15 with Ogren? Like, what are we doing here? And so, to go back to your point, Höglander went from 24 goals in 2023, 24 with the Canucks, to 8 goals last season. He had 25 points, and he is a winger.
Yeah.
And you just said this. You think, and I think you're right, they're probably going to make their splash in free agency by signing a winger. Yeah. Like this is why you have to, this center dance is an intricate dance. Like, don't go trade for a winger when you can sign. Like, go through the free agent list, and I will, the Wild's done a good job on the blue line, so they don't really have to, it's not like they need a defenseman. They've got plenty of those. So where they can get help in the free agent market is at the wing, but you still got the Rossi problem. And if you're going to spin him off for the 15th pick in a draft and a winger, and then you're going to try to spin the 15th pick off, which, by the way, alone is not going to get you a really good player back. So now it's going to have to be, again, Ogren, who was a first-round pick. This is all very backwards if this is the case. Now, it is interesting that LeBrun reported as well. So the scouting combine, which this league holds, and I don't think anyone in this country cares about, every year in Buffalo. So the scouting combine evidently was packed with GMs because the draft is going to be not on site. So like the draft is going to be conducted like the football draft now, where the teams for the first time are not going to be in a centralized location. They're going to be at their facilities. So the draft used to be a place where you'd go like the week that led up to it, right? And you'd go out to dinner and have face-to-face conversations with your fellow GMs, and a ton of business would get done, and that would be reflected by trades that we ordinarily saw pretty quickly on draft night or day 2 of the draft. That now is not going to be the case. So I guess the combine, there was a ton of due diligence being done for the type of trade. So maybe Guerin has something up his sleeve. But all I've got to say about this is nothing that I'm seeing reported nationally or locally even comes close to exciting me.
I think your point, your last point there too, is like Guerin very well may have something in place. He might have a plan. He might have a plan of attack. He's done some deals in the past, and granted, I think it's unfortunately the scales are maybe evening out now, but it felt like for a while he was on such a hot streak where it was like, wow, what a move. Wow, what a move. Billy G, what a move. And then some of the signings, some of the like that, yeah, that was, oh God. I mean, that was in hindsight, an amazing win. If he pulls something like that off again, then by all means, like extension, your seat is forever cold, like all this other stuff. But right now, like I'm not going to count him out as of right now. I'm going to wait and see because I think I still trust him. I know there are probably some Wild fans that are going to say, AJ, there's no reason for you to blah. He's done this. As of right now, I think I still trust him to do whatever he wants to do with Marco Rossi. We'll evaluate it afterwards, but like this to me is a major pivoting point in trust with the Wild fan base, how skeptical I am about things moving forward in the future, et cetera, et cetera. Like this for me, and maybe it's weird for me to be hitching this wagon to Marco Rossi, but given the circumstances, like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of winning options by moving him out. Like it seems like you're just moving him for the sake of moving him, and you're not going to get a good return. And like I said, I'll wait until I see the final product. But like once we hear a trade is announced or something like that, I get to have immediate reaction. You can't give me the whole, well, it's a draft pick, because if it's a draft pick, I don't want to hear about it. Yeah. I can't judge it 6 years down the road because they're supposed to be winning here in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. This is their time now. I don't want to judge something here in 2029. Like, give it to me now.
Yeah, there's a ton of pressure based on the season that they're going into. Like, that's the thing about this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't afford, with a player like Rossi, one, you can't afford a misstep period, but two, you can't afford it when you are, like, you basically have promised, hey, we got our money now, we're going to go out and do things, and the table is set. You've got to come away with a center that is as good or better than Rossi. And the reality is, if you look at his regular season stats when he got a chance to play, they were pretty dang good, and it's hard to make a compelling case against him as a player because of what he did. Like, yeah, he's not big. Yeah, he's not heavy, but he went to the front of the net. He scored goals. There were some things we saw in previous incarnations of this hockey team where I was like, get rid of that guy. I know he's good, but I don't even care, right? Yeah. Marco Rossi's sort of the anti. I mean, he is a grinder. He works hard. He's got skills. So, yeah, I'm with you. There is tremendous pressure here to get this right, and it feels like you're in a pickle, perhaps, and hopefully we're wrong, but until a trade is consummated, we won't know, or he comes back. All right, we are done. Judd's Hockey Show. AJ, Judd, see you with Jesse Pierce next week.